old philosopher Mike Tyson, he said it, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Hey, it's Scott Beebe with Business on Purpose. You're about to hear an incredible interview with my friend and also business owner, Chris Dalzell, who is the owner-operator of Shoreline Construction. He actually co-owns it with Justin Harvey, who you'll hear in a future episode. Justin runs and operates Premier Exteriors. But in this episode, you're going to hear Chris Dalzell, how he came to be, how Shoreline came to be, and some of the things that they have been pushing through at Shoreline Construction to take it to a business where they're literally living out their vision, their mission, and their values. I want you to see this play out. It's really powerful. Make sure to check out mybusinessonpurpose.com. Lots of powerful content that we got up there, answering some of the most difficult, challenging questions that we get. We lay them right out on the front page of our homepage, mybusinessonpurpose.com. We've got lots of other resources there for you. But enjoy this interview with the owner of Shoreline Construction, Chris Dalzell. All right, Scott Beebe with Business on Purpose podcast. And actually, this is a discussion that we started probably 5.5 years ago. So if you go back to one of the first, I think, 2 or 3 episodes of the Business on Purpose podcast, you'll see the name Chris Dalzell. And Chris and I have been buddies for years, and we meet together almost every Thursday. The three of us, me, Chris, and Jarek, meet together. So we talk a lot. We talk about a lot of different things. I have the privilege of being able to be Shoreline's coach, and just about every Wednesday at 10 o'clock, it's been a standing meeting for years. We walk through roadmaps and all sorts of stuff. And first time I interviewed Chris Dalzell, he was staring out the window behind his house at the river. This morning, he is in a windowless room with calendars and checklists and all those sorts of things from the world headquarters of Shoreline Construction. So, Chris, I'm excited to be able to have this talk again.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Hey, I want to talk about a couple things. I want to go back. A lot of people, when they see Shoreline Construction, they'll come in, they'll drive into Bluffton, and they'll see now because you're doing a lot of commercial, they'll see the big Shoreline banners, and they'll see all that kind of stuff. And so they assume, like we do with all business owners, that all this happened overnight. But before Shoreline was Shoreline, and before Chris Dalzell was the Chris Dalzell people know associated with Shoreline, Chris Dalzell was this little punk kid out of North Augusta and then Georgia Southern, and then he and this young lady named Katie got together, and now they're a family. Where did all of this start? I want you to go back to kind of college, Georgia Southern. Did you ever think this was in the cards for you to own Shoreline Construction? What were you thinking when you were at Georgia Southern as to where you might head after college was over?
Wow, I got to dig back. So I actually went to Georgia Southern to be an engineer. I thought I don't know that I knew what that meant, but it sounded good for me. And after a year of that at Georgia Southern, I kind of found my way, and I was enjoying being in Statesboro, and I decided to change my major to construction management. And we did. I guess I graduated in 2004 with a construction management degree. And honestly, I didn't have any experience, and I found that it was very hard to get a job. So I had no guidance or real idea of where I was going to go or what town I wanted to live in. I didn't care. I just wanted a job. And with all the big GCs, they wouldn't hire me because I didn't have any experience. And I thought that was kind of weird that I went to college, which I was supposed to do, and then I'm ready to go to work, but yet I didn't have any construction experience. And so ended up not really knowing if I wanted to go residential or commercial. So to answer your question, I had no idea that this was what was going to happen. My dad was a serial entrepreneur, so it was probably in my blood. I felt that real soon after being in a corporate company. I worked for Pulte Homes, which actually is the largest home builder in the country now. So there was a lot of corporate structure and things like that I realized quick that, no, I think I need to be self-employed. Ended up getting an internship at Sun City Hilton Head right here in Hilton Head. A buddy of mine, Jay Nelson, was working there, and he was from Georgia Southern, and so that's where I went. I went there, and then I got laid off in 2007. And I said, well, heck, why not just go and own a business for myself? And here we go.
So what when you decided to go into business for yourself, it sounds, like that's what you're supposed to do and all that. But what made you not go and say, well, let me run my hand at commercial. There's usually a lag, commercial, residential. Might still have been some work out there, whether it be commercial or some other things. Why didn't you decide to go work for a company versus starting your own?
Well, I actually was moonlighting with my now business partner, Justin Harvey. We were moonlighting a bit and building a few spec houses on the side when the economy was good in 2006. And so we had a little bit of taste of that you could make a little money. And if you built a house and took a lot of risk and borrowed money. And so I had already made the plan, believe it or not, to go out on my own. My dad was going to help me. He was going to buy the lots, and then I would get the construction loans for the houses. And so the layoff was actually just kind of part. I mean, I used to tell people it was great. I got a severance to leave, but I was leaving anyway. So I was a young dad, and Katie and I'd made the decision pre-layoff that we were going to give it a whirl. And so with the partnership of my dad, Justin stayed with the company he was at, and so I went out. It was just Katie and I on our own.
Yeah. And so you were building houses. I remember you telling the story, you building houses basically anywhere you could build them. I mean, it wasn't like you walked in, and for anybody who's in the low country, we've got loads of gated neighborhoods and retiree neighborhoods over 55 and all that kind of stuff. And you couldn't sniff a lot in some of those places. And so you were going anywhere you could go.
Yeah, we were buying overpriced lots in Ridgeland, South Carolina, which is, if you've ever been to Hilton Head, we're at exit 8. It's up exit 23. And it's just a kind of a very rural area. And we were buying lots. Believe it or not, the money we were paying for those lots, even today with the economy where it is, they're still not worth what we were paying for them then.
Wow. All right. So you started early on. Is with any construction company, well, with any business in general, there's a lot of chaos that comes out of the gate. So talk in the 08, 09, 2010, 2011, those early 3 to 5 years of Shoreline construction. What did day-to-day, what did chaos look like for you guys?
And I was a one-man show. Katie at the time wasn't working with the company, and I was trying to do whatever I could. I made some relationships on Hilton Head with with real estate agents, and then we would take the closing sheets that they needed to get the work done, and I would go get all the little punch work done, and sometimes that would turn into a bathroom remodel. And so day-to-day was just get it. I mean, it didn't matter. I was at Home Depot every morning. I had I think it took me probably 3 years before I even actually built a house for somebody. That was a lot of the byproduct of the economy, as well as I didn't have the resume. So I remember I got told a lot of no's, like, yeah, we're going to go with the guy that's got experience, and whether or not that was the right choice or not. And we had a good break we sold a few spec houses. I owned one for about 6 years and paid the interest on that. That was a fun learning experience. Is probably where one of our core values came from. But it was pure chaos. God, I didn't have any direction. I didn't have any, looking back, but man, we were surviving, not thriving. And believe it or not, I knew how much I needed for my family to live. And Katie, we wanted her to stay home. We had a second child the year we got laid off. And so we had a young family, and Katie, I wanted her to stay home. She wanted to stay home. And so we knew how much money we needed, went out and leased a car. That was against everything in my blood and my father's blood. He still doesn't know that. But we knew how much we needed to live. And that was my goal. It's like, all right, I got to make that amount that month. And if I did, great. And then if I made it for 2 months, then great. And that was really what I did.
So I didn't know the part about you did not build a house for the first 3 years. So you were doing remodel work, which is awesome work. But to a guy who ultimately wants to build houses, we look back and we say things like 3 years and 5 years. Our business at this point, at the time of this recording, has been going about 5.5 years. And that's been our life for the last 5.5 years. But 10 years from now, we're going to throw 5 years around just like it's nothing. For 3 years, you were just slugging, doing remodel work. Like you said, you're going to Home Depot every day. In construction business, there's so many moving parts. How did you keep all of the administrative functions, the operational functions, the marketing functions, the sales? How did you keep all of that together so that it didn't just, put you out of business or just drive you out of your mind?
Looking back, I mean, driving out of your mind is it, but it was, 60, 70-hour weeks. And you're talking about the financial part. The financials were an Excel spreadsheet for each job that sometimes I created after the job was done. And then I had a checkbook, one of those big long checkbooks that had it under my center console. And that was my finance department. And then it's interesting, about a year and a half in, Justin and I decided to start the other business. And so we quickly were able to leverage each other and learn from each other. And we realized this was not the way to do business. So we hired a part-time bookkeeper, and then we hired our first employee. And it was just it was a time of desperation's probably not the right word, because there was a lot of happiness and a lot of joy, but we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know what we didn't know. And we thought we were doing great and killing it. And we were for where we were in our that phase of life. To say that we had systems and processes in place would be just a bold-faced lie.
What didn't you know that you look back and go, man, it would have been great to know that in those early 3 to 5 years? Job costing.
I still see guys.
Talk about that for people not in the construction industry. When you say job costing, what do you mean?
Understand your numbers. Understand what it takes to run the job. That people are time and people are money. Understanding that I need a solid budget before I break ground, and that we've got to hold our subcontractors and our partners to the prices that they give us. And so we have all kinds of checks and balances in place within Shoreline Construction that we check that monthly. So every 30 days, we know exactly where we are on every single job. And a lot of bigger construction companies have that. That's not foreign language. But with a small business or a sole proprietor, I still find that that they don't understand their cost. And that was a game changer for us.
All right, so you guys are starting to kind of play around with getting things in order. I love how you said that your financial department was the big checkbook underneath, but also figuring out job costing, understanding, looking at budgets before projects and all that. And even for people not in construction, understanding your costs around, if you're in retail, inventory, understanding your costs around payroll, which is a huge percentage of service companies. And so starting to know all of those things and the things that created that chaos. You've told me before that the business was owning both you and Justin. When did you guys decide that, man, we really need to start redirecting our time and our energy and our focus to the business and less to the product and less to actually building homes and more to actually running the entity that builds the homes or that puts on exteriors on the buildings or whatever? When did that happen?
Sitting here reflecting on this, it's been a couple of years since we've really kind of realized that, okay, we've got a legitimate business here. And, now we have almost 50 employees between the two companies, and we're able to lead. I don't think that we understood what true leadership was. So we thought that leadership was just telling everybody what to do and, hey, I pay you, so let's go. And we've learned since then, obviously, leaders are people that, that you want to follow. And so we learned pretty early on that we didn't know what we were doing. But, when you start your business, you are sales. All those different functions you just described, you are sales, you are marketing, you are everything. Justin and I started coaching actually before you went into business. We started coaching with another company. It was just a quarterly deal that we went to, and we started to surround ourselves with people that were successful, and we just picked their brains. And I've been told my whole life, you ask too many questions, and my dad would always stop and pull me aside and say, "Son, keep asking. You're never gonna know the answer unless you keep asking." And so I'm not afraid to ask a question. I'm not afraid to ask you a question you might not want to answer. But I want the answer, so I'm going to ask. And I've learned so much from that. Having a business partner that's like-minded, morally, business function-wise, has been a blessing to Katie and I, just because we've been able to really bounce ideas off each other and fail together and succeed together. And so that's been a big part of our success as well.
So you guys, a few years back, you started down the road of intentionally starting to work on the business in multiple ways. What are some of the things, as you look back over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, that you have built, either in Shoreline, in Premier, that you guys have built as a team that you look back and go, I don't even know how we made it without this before.
Yeah, obviously I don't want to the core value piece is probably something that we fall on constantly as a company. They're on the wall behind or in front of me. That's one that started, with you 5.5 years ago. And we actually have molded them since then, but those are true business principles for our company, and our team knows it.
How do you
and it's our
use those?
filter.
Talk about how you practically embed those.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously lots of one-off stories of where that we need, but we've been able to use them to either get business or not get business that we didn't want, but we use them as a filter to make decisions. And so, I mean, I could give an example of a client didn't like the front door on their back door on their house, and they said, "This is not the door that we chose," and it was the door that they chose, and it was on their plans. And one of our core values is process driven, and so we went back and we looked at our software program. And one of our processes is to make sure that everything's signed off on, every single solitary detail. And she had signed off on the front door, but not the back door. So we ran it through the filter. Then the second one of our other core values is fiscal responsibility. All right, well, yeah, it's going to cost us money. And technically, we didn't charge her for the other door. We charged her for the one that we had. But fiscal responsibility could also be spending money. And so the interesting part about this story is that we sat in the room and the entire company talked through it. And we have a very open dialogue in our meetings. It's 20-something people. And people spoke up and said, I don't think we should lose the money. It's going to, we profit share. And so they were worried about the job. And then and somebody else said, yeah, but we didn't follow our process. I said, okay, so we just ran it through the filter and it did not pass. So we have to buy the new doors. And so the company, as a whole, we collectively decided that that was going to happen. And we did. And what's interesting is that lady is a raving fan. And I can actually attest one job directly to her that we've done since then.
So a couple of years ago, Jesse Cole spoke at one of the events here locally and talked about client experience and all those sorts of things. You guys have basically taken that idea, you decided to process it out completely. Talk about how you have taken the client and put them kind of on this pedestal of experience, and how it's become, instead of just this thing that you talk about, it's actually become a processed ideal for the company. It's something that you guys track, you follow. Talk about how that embedded into Shoreline.
Yeah, there's a lot of builders that build great houses. I mean, you can ride through some of these neighborhoods that we build in, and you can't, you pointed this out to me many times, which is funny, but you can't decipher a Shoreline construction house from a XYZ builder house. Like, you just can't. There's no billboards on them. We don't get to put plaques on the front showing who built it. And so we had to kind of determine that, okay, there's a lot of guys that build houses. So we obviously have a sales and marketing strategy, but then what do we do when the client decides that they're going to work with us? And so we laid out a very, very detailed client experience that is from the time we meet you until, well, it's really forever. And we actually have a director of client experience, and all that role does is take care of the client. Not a handyman. He is has a law degree. It's interesting, but and he's just got a thing about him that people like, and he's able to go in and take these clients' issues if they have them and turn it into a real positive. We don't really have a lot of that case. It's more of, we're very proactive in our process. So we throw a lot of parties for our clients. We do a lot of surprises and things like that they're unexpected, just to add to that client experience.
So talk about some of those parties that you've thrown in the past, because these are fantastic, and they're so innovative, but the innovation only comes because the process is in place. But talk about some of those.
Yeah, when you talk about the process, I'm looking at this huge board that's covering probably 30 feet of the wall in our office, and it's literally step by step for what we do. And we try to deliver the same process because we want the same result. There is a saying about that, but I don't know I can't repeat it. But some of the things that we'll do is we have a closing celebration. It's called a day one celebration. We don't really have a closing. Closing is, the end. And we believe that when our client finally takes over their home, that it's really day one. It's their first day there. So we've done all this work for, 12 months. And now they're moving in, and a lot of builders we just see, and we were that way too. Man, I just hope they don't call us. And we just found that was the wrong approach. So instead of having a walkthrough on the house where we all go try to find what's wrong with it, we're the professionals. So we have processes in place that hopefully when we move to the closing date, there's not a lot, or if any, issues, outstanding issues with the house. So we do that as a closing celebration. We call it a day one celebration. We roll out a red carpet. We provide food. Sometimes there's music. There's a ribbon cutting with some big Shoreline scissors. We give them gifts, meaning we give them everything they would have to go out and buy for their house: floor cleaners and laundry detergents and dishwashers detergents. And so we provide all of that. And then the company comes out, whoever's been a part of their project team, and we have that celebration toast with them with champagne. And it just turns into a nice celebration of all the hard work.
And how much of that do you set up yourself?
Me, Chris?
Yes.
0.
And how much of the house do you build?
0.
And how much of the budgets and checks do you sign in the company?
0.
Okay. And how long ago was that not true for you?
3 years, 2 to 3 years probably.
So there's been some transformation there from a business standpoint to where you've really turned into the owner of the company. So the assumption is that you sit back and just, collect money. Obviously, that's not the reality. What do you do now? What has this complete all-in commitment, not only with you but with your team, to working on the business? What has that forced you to transition into from an owner's role?
Yeah. It's real simple. I mean, I go back to the Delegation Roadmap. It's where this all started. And I found that I was doing all of these tasks because I didn't believe anyone else could do them. And then, you and I give a lot of credit to you. We strategized so many hours and hours discussing well, hold on a second. He can do that. Well, they couldn't do it at the level I can. And we kind of laid out this plan of, well, if we believe they can do it to 80% of the level that I can, then we need to give them a shot. And what I have determined is that they actually can do it better. They're focused on their role. They know what they need to do to get the job done. And then when I say 0, that sounds cool, to answer those questions when you were asking me, but there's checks and balances at every level. There's financial checks and balances that come to me in a book that are every 30 days that have literally, I can look at the temperature at every level, from project management, marketing budget, job costing, profit and loss, balance sheets, down to the checking statement that I actually go through and physically look at every check that was written. I still do that. But now I can review the company and take the temperature of the company in about 2 hours, as opposed to me taking hours upon hours every week to be the function, to be the person that had to handle every one of those. That's been a game changer. So now my role is I can really spend time focusing on the company. We hear that term all the time, in the business or on the business, and I get that, but it's real. And so now I can focus on the well-being of my team, and I could attest that to the low turnover that we've had, and that they genuinely know I care about them. And we win together and we lose together as a team, and that's been big. And so, I would probably give my title and you've helped me with this, is I'm the Chief Training Officer. So I still walk houses. I still go out with the guys and spend a lot of time in the homes and helping them understand why things are happening, and use my expertise to help guide the company. But it's not my role.
But you're not doing the work. You're not doing the work every day. You're doing a different kind of work every day. So with that, one of the reasons that we do this, obviously, is not to only impact the business. It's clearly impacted the business. Let me play a little devil's advocate. So somebody comes to you and says, well, Chris, it's easy for you to do that now because you got 20 people. What do you say to them?
I have the same people as when I didn't do it. I just empowered them more. And I found that they had more gas in the tank. And I found that, with the right processes and the right incentives, that your employees will work hard for you. And that's what I would tell you.
So when we met, one of the challenges that you had and you'd written out in your initial vision was you had Katie, you had these, at the time, 2 girls, about to be 3. I guess it was 3 at that time. And the business was crawling all over you. You just didn't have a lot of free time to be able to go do. How has this impacted your family? So after you start working on the business, you really intentionally start to build out a lot of these processes. You're empowering people. You're genuinely delegating to other people to where you're checking the thermometer, the temperature, rather than like generating the heat all the time. What kind of impact has this had on you and the girls?
I mean, that's probably the biggest thing. And somebody, it came from your 12-week plan last week. I wrote it down. I think it came from that. If you're successful, you can find yourself complacent. And so there's obviously plenty of things you can fill your time with. And I can fill my time with walking jobs. I can fill my time with the business, or I can fill some of my time with my family. And I've chosen at this stage of my life to try to be more present and not let the business tell me when I'm going to go home and be with the kids or take them to a dental appointment or pick them up from school. And so what it's afforded me is the opportunity to be able to make my own schedule. The business doesn't make my schedule for me. And now some people aren't like that. I realize that some people love the whole, just showing up at a certain time and going home at a certain time. And I have found I can just be very productive if I schedule out those different times. And so, I mean, for the family, I think I hope that my family one day will say is that I was present. And I believe that they would say that today if you asked them.
That's huge. So you've climbed a couple of mountains so far. What's the next one? What's the next mountain that you feel like it's time to start climbing?
We're constantly evolving. So, I'm sitting here looking at my 12-week goals for this session, and I've got a lot to do still. Finalizing agreements. I'm looking at growth plans for the business. The business is changing. The economy's changing. Our world's changing. And so we're trying to be ahead of the curve. That's something that I think we've always done a good job at, is we've been able to take the risk and invest in our business. And so we're doing that again right now. I mean, we're seeing our commercial business take off. So I'm setting new heights, new goals for that. We're opening a furniture business through our interior design, setting new goals for that. And then obviously the residential custom homes, which is really our bread and butter, is growing as well. And there's different markets to attack. And so strategically, I'm still looking at business growth, which is I think what I need to be doing.
Yeah. But you're just looking at it a lot different than you used to look at it.
We're actually going to plan it, which but we're going to plan the growth. And we're not just going to go get the work and figure out how to do it. We're going to plan the growth.
So take over the last few years and all of this that you've put in place, you've grown tremendously. What's a piece of wisdom? What's a piece of long-standing insight that you feel like you've learned? You may not have mastered it yet, that's fine, but you feel like you've learned that is very shareable.
I mean, I think it goes back to my team. I'm real proud that I've had one person turn a 2-week notice in 14 years of business. Now, we have had a couple of other employees leave, and so that's not the only person, but it's whether it was an agreed upon departure or separation or a role change. But I think our people is what I constantly am just kind of amazed by. How they're dedicated to the company as a whole, and B, how they continue to grow and evolve. So that's probably the best advice I can give, is that, you have to lead them, but you don't have to be the boss. And no one wants to be, told by the boss. And I think that I see businesses that have a lot of high turnover, and it's kind of my way or the highway attitude. And I really try not to focus on that. I still demand excellence. I mean, I still demand us to deliver the product that our clients are paying us a premium for. But there's ways to go about it. And so I'd have to say my team for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Man, we're proud of you, proud of what you built, proud of the team that you've put together. Thank you for sharing a lot of this with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.